Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 916A, and today's date is March 11th, 2016, and the title of the episode is Obama Pushes TPP, which will transform the U.S. into a third world country. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we've been talking about the economy and how things are falling apart, cracking apart. And what's very interesting, when you look back to 2008, prior to the Great Recession crisis that occurred in October moving forward of 2008, it's funny how we see a lot of the same news stories where everything is fine, everything is contained, don't worry, the economy is improving, it will bounce back. Even Larry Young from the National Association of Realtors said during the 2008 season, the winter season, real estate is going to bounce back and everything's going to be fine. And we're seeing the same stories at this point. Even people are saying that don't worry, the economy looks like it's doing absolutely perfectly fine. And what we're seeing is a carbon copy of what happened prior to the entire implosion of the economy in 2008. But this time, it's much worse. This time, we had all those people that were already laid off who never bounced back. This time, we have trillions of dollars of toxic real estate on the Fed's books. This time, we have a lot more part-time workers than full-time workers. This time, we have manufacturing that has lost millions of jobs. This time, the people didn't create the bubbles. The central bank did. They pumped up the entire economy, and it's one gigantic bubble waiting to pop. This time, those people who lucked out from the last Great Recession are going to get hit. Those people that purchased homes at the height of this market are going to get hit. The entire system is headed in the same direction that we headed in during 2008, when the government, the corporate media, the central bank all told us that everything was fine. The same thing is happening once again. During the month of August and September of 2008, housing was fine. The subprime problem was contained. Bear Stearns, not a big deal. AIG, we don't see problems here. And then one day, out of the blue, when everyone thought everything was fine, it came to a screeching halt. I've said this before. All those sunny days before the storm hits, no one is going to remember. They're only going to remember the damage from the storm. And this is what we're seeing at this point. We're seeing more layoffs. Deere & Company laying off 125 people. Nordstrom's, 100 people. Colgate-Palmolive, they will be laying off people. State of Connecticut, 1,000 state layoffs. Wichita School District in Kansas is laying off people. Alcoa is laying off 325. Lockheed Martin in the aeronautics division, 1,000 people. Germany, RWE International, 2,400 people. And we're seeing many layoffs in the retail industry. Remember, the U.S. is not counting the layoffs. They got rid of that department back in 2013. And as we move forward, the situation today mimics 2008 with a twist where things are a lot worse. For example, food stamp beneficiaries, they have exceeded 45 million for 56 straight months in a row. I mean, that is a lot of people on food stamps for a very long time. And this data was released by the Department of Agriculture. Now, as we move forward, the government will continually try to collect taxes to bring in revenue. Why? Because they're not bringing in enough. So on the corporate media, we see the U.S. government has collected a record $1.2 trillion in taxes. Now remember, they have Obamacare, they have FATCA, bringing in revenue. Without that, there'd be no record number. So they brought in $1.248 trillion worth of taxes for the first 5 months of the fiscal year of 2016. In the same 5-month period, the government spent $1.6 billion, which translates to a deficit of $353 billion, 28% of the total tax revenue. We have a problem. We have a major problem, because where else are they going to get the additional revenue? They've been taxing everything, and the spending is increasing. The debt on the country is increasing. The interest payments will be increasing. It's not just going to disappear. Yes, they'll be able to cover it up and pretend that someone else caused it, but we're still going to go through the pain. The pain of this collapse will not disappear. And we see that there are many warning signs that this stock market is a complete illusion. We see the decline in profit margins. When margins shrink, business activity contracts. Businesses cut budgets and jobs. And guess what? Recessions typically follow. We're seeing that now. Price to sales. The industrial sector provides some insight into the health of the U.S. manufacturing. We see the sector recorded one of the highest PS ratios ever. Only the 2-year window of the dot-com bubble produced higher readings. Industrial production is rolling over. The most recent Chicago PMI reading of 42.9 has never been this low outside of a recession. The New York Stock Exchange margin debt at record levels. Investors have borrowed capital at a record clip to buy stocks. Since 2009, investors have gone all in and then some. What's happening here? This whole entire scenario of a recovery is non-existent. As a percentage of GDP, margin debt hit a record high in 2015. The Fed played a massive role in this, allowing investors to borrow tons of money to buy stocks. Now, if the Fed adopts NIRP, no interest rate policy, yes, the bull market will most likely continue. If they don't, the whole thing comes apart. And right now, they've raised the interest rate. They're going to have to backpedal off of this. Margin to debt GDP. When speculation runs wild, future returns typically suffer. Today we have wild speculation. The belief that the bull market will continue. But we know the smart money is leaving the market. During the heydays of the dot-com, the housing bubble, the margin debt to GDP levels were the same as today. What does this tell you? We are doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result. Well, that's the definition of insanity. Because we're not going to get a different result. We're going to get the same result or worse. We see that the Baltic Dry Index is up to about 388 points right now. And we see that the Asian dry bulk capsize rates are flat, and we see the rally is fading. So most likely, according to what we're seeing, next week, the Baltic Dry Index will most likely level off. Now, of course, once this occurs, the corporate media, the U.S. government, Everyone else, the financial pundits, will say this is the new normal now. We're supposed to be at 392 points or 400 points. This is what we should expect. This is what they did with the real estate market. This is what they did with the auto loan market. This is what they did with pretty much everything. But we know better. We know because we've been following it. We understand this is not normal. Maybe in a collapsing economy, but in a recovering economy, no, it is not normal. Now, back in 2014, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, he flew to Saudi Arabia. He met the king in Saudi Arabia, and they came up with this plan for Saudi Arabia to pump as much oil as they possibly can to put pressure on Iran and Russia, and to help out the U.S. economy by lowering the oil prices, hoping the people would have extra money, go out and use it in retail, allow corporations to keep and make more profits, to keep their prices high on their goods. Transportation costs would be a lot lower. Airline flights, they'd be able to be profitable because they'd be paying a lot less for fuel. And as this happened, we're seeing that Saudi Arabia is collapsing. We know they're looking to looking to borrow loans to make up what they've been losing. And we have to remember, Saudi Arabia, they are losing billions of dollars in Yemen and in Syria. And at this point, Saudi Arabia is going to completely collapse. Now, Obama, he is pushing the passage of the TPP. And it doesn't matter what the public think. It doesn't matter what the world thinks. The people are speaking out against it. And you have to remember certain things with the TPP. That the United States right now is in the final stages of negotiating the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And this is supposed to be a free trade agreement with Mexico, Canada, Japan, Singapore, and other countries. But we know that the everyday American will not benefit from the TPP. Who's going to benefit? Well, it's going to be corporations and the central bank. And we know from the TPP there are provisions in there that will allow the corporations to create their own type of court system called the Investor State Dispute Settlement, the ISDS. And this will bypass the courts of the United States or bypass the courts of other countries. And this would undermine U.S. sovereignty. The other things that we see in the TPP is that it allows employees from other countries, third world nations, to come into the United States, and it allows them to do work here at their current payment that they're receiving in their country. So if we have a plant that's manufacturing here in the United States, and we have people come over from a different country, and they're getting $2 per hour, the American worker will no way be able to compete for that same job. Because if they're looking for $20 an hour or $15 an hour or $30 an hour, they can't compete with the $2 an hour. Which means the American worker is going to have to lower how much they're receiving. And as this continues, the U.S., with a flood of workers from third world nations, will transform the U.S. into a third world country. And our way of life, the way we live today, will be completely transformed. And this is what they're pushing right now. And this is not going to help anyone except corporations, central bank, governments that are getting kickbacks. But it doesn't help the people. Actually, it does the opposite. And I've said this in the past. Every time the government comes out and tells you it's good for you, it is always the opposite. It's always good for them. The Affordable Care Act, well, we're seeing it's not affordable. The USA Freedom Act, there's nothing to do with freedom. It's the actual opposite. The Patriot Act, well, that's the opposite too. And we could look at all of this and we see that everything they tell us is always the opposite. It benefits them, not the people. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.